The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the show hosts, guests, and callers, and do not necessarily reflect the views of the staff or management of Wave 105.1 FM, Glimpses Media, or our partners. We strive to provide quality, respectful, and engaging content, and we welcome you to participate in the conversation. Thank you for tuning in to Wave 105.1 FM. Enjoy the show.
Good morning, Guam. It's KGUM-FM, Wave 105.1. Time now is 10:12 a.m. on this Monday, June 15, 2026. Right now we have Challenge the Status Quo with the director from the Commission on Decolonization, Mr. Melvin WonPat Borja. Catch us for information and discussion on the ongoing movement to decide Guam's political status. Our wave studio line is 671-922-1051-1052. We'd love for you to join in the conversation. KGUM-FM, Wave 105.1, the Talk of Guam.
All right, half a day, and welcome back to Challenge the Status Quo. My name is Melvin WonPat Borja, and you are locked into Wave 105.1 FM. Back on a Monday morning with some political status dialogue. Hopefully it's a dialogue. But I'm down to just do the thing, if that's what it requires. I feel like I kind of sound like Darth Vader right now. Do I sound like Darth Vader?
What? You mean the voice?
I feel like this echo.
You hearing it?
No, it's just, it's not like a feedback, but maybe I need to drop my voice 3 octaves so I can really get the Darth Vader effect going on. Luke, guau sit tamu. All right. Well, I hope everybody had a great weekend. There's definitely been a bunch of interesting things going on. I want to give a real quick shout out and thank you to former Speaker BJ Cruz, current public auditor. He is also one of the members of OPIR, the Organization for People's Indigenous Rights. One of the, I would argue, one of the most important groups in our recent history in our move for self-determination and decolonization. But the Commission on Decolonization hosted a lecture on Saturday at the Zangin Tihita Pueshadzi exhibit, which is still going on at the Guam Museum. If you have not got a chance to check it out, I would recommend it. It is free, and it goes every Tuesday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., and Saturdays on from 10 a.m. to 10 a.m. to 2. And it'll be live until June 27th, which is a Saturday. That's the last day. So if you haven't got a chance to check it out, go down and check it out. But yeah, COD has been running some programming around the exhibit and just trying to make use of the space and try to connect with the community and create more opportunities for people to learn. So we had a conversation on Saturday about the ConCon. There were 2 ConCons, one in 60 something, 69, and another one in 77, I think, 79, I can't remember. Anyway, it's in the exhibit, go check it out. But there were 2 ConCons, and this, the Constitutional Convention is a really interesting topic because the Constitution topic is really interesting because the United States authorized Guam and the territories, all the territories, to draft their own constitutions. And this was seen as a way to, take a step toward full self-government. But Guam voters widely rejected constitution drafting because they wanted to resolve Guam's political status before drafting a constitution. And this is a really, I think this particular piece of the conversation is contentious, and a lot of people disagree. We've taken calls on the show regularly about, criticizing that particular aspect. There's still a lot of people out there who say why haven't we drafted a constitution? That's the first thing that we should do, because it's available to us, right? But I want to just say that I don't disagree with historically the stance that our community has taken, or at least the majority of our community has taken, against ratifying or drafting a constitution. It wouldn't be ratified by us. It would be ratified by the United States. Would have to be ratified by the United States. Oh, thanks, Harmony. I got my crew is listening in, and Harmony just hooked me up with the CON. The first CON was in '69, and the second was in '77. Thank you for that. But in principle, I believe that our community rejected the Constitution because the caveat of the Constitution was that it had to recognize U.S. sovereignty, which is fine in the case of a state, right? Like when the state of California, who also has a constitution just like every other state, right? State of Texas, all of them, they all got their own state constitution. They all recognize the supremacy of the United States Constitution, right? So just like how in American government, federal law always supersedes state law, but states are still sovereign within their borders, and that's like the principle of it, right? So, I mean, I don't disagree with the stance that our voters have taken in insisting that we resolve our political status, we self-determine first, and then draft a constitution. And so, I wanted to thank former Speaker B.J. Cruz for coming out to the event and being our featured speaker, because he has this really fascinating story and perspective based on his experience in the work. And Yuli, thank you for also. Yuli came out to our event.
Oh yeah,
you even brought your mom. Thank you for bringing your mom. Your mom is super sweet. She is. Every time I see Yuli's mom, she says, "Okay, this is great. Now let's go do something."
Yeah,
she's always like, "So when are we gonna vote? Let's just
go.
do it. Let's go."
Yeah.
I love it. But yeah, thank you for coming out to the event. There are a few people that came out that were really. The feedback was great. I thought that people who came were really interested in it. We streamed it online, and we'll be putting it back up in its recorded version so that if you missed it, you get a chance to take a look. But yeah, what I really appreciated was that. First, I got to thank former Speaker Cruz, because I know that everybody's busy on this, especially a Saturday. Saturday is like Matai Day. And so, I think he did go to Matai that day. That's also part of why we put it later.
Yeah.
Was because Speaker Cruz had a obligation.
Okay.
And so we appreciate his time there. But what I really am grateful for is that there are so many fantastic characters in our history, right? And when you look at all of the people, the movers and shakers who were doing this work in advancing this cause of decolonization and Samoa self-determination, it's amazing to see how many people have been involved in this work and connected to this work. And I mean, I'm not even that young anymore, but like for people me and my age, like we look at like Speaker Cruz and that generation of leaders, elders, they're our elders, but in this era of their lives, they were kind of like the young upstarts, like they're the ones who were they were already in very active roles in the community and in government at the time. Senator Cruz said that he was Speaker Cruz said that he was the legal counsel for Governor Berdayu. And it was so cool to just kind of hear him, just recollect the experience and the different roles that he played and how he had to navigate his personal beliefs, his moral beliefs and values against his professional responsibilities. There was a point, I don't know if you caught that part, Yuli, but when he said that he was against the Constitution, the second con. He was against us drafting a Constitution for this reason, and he said Governor Berdayu supported it, and he's the one who kind of put it into motion, right? Because the members had to be elected,
Right.
and so but he said, but Governor Berdayu at that time was also very open with the staff, right, and the team around him, including Speaker Cruz, and that he made room for them to have their own beliefs and their own perspectives, and that I think I remember that. And they would converse a lot about it, and kind of debate about it. And then he turned around and he said, "But I was the Tentagu who had to carry the briefcase when we presented it to President Carter." And I was just thinking, like, wow, that's I can really empathize with that perspective, because for me, I came into this world as a public school teacher. Before I started working in the administration at the Commission on Decolonization, I was teaching at Southern High School. And I was one of the activists out there doing the thing. And I gotta say, in some days I gotta admit, I really miss that life. I miss being a public school teacher when I could say whatever I want. Say whatever I want, however I want. And like, my principal was not gonna call me and tell me I was out of line. But in this line of work, it's a little different. And that was one of the things that I had to kind of figure out too, is in the role in the Commission on Decolonization, we're not here to convince you about which status you should choose. Which status is the best status option for Guam. Is statehood better than independence, or is free association better than statehood, or whatever? I mean, that's not our role. Our role is to be able to be clear about what our current status means, and what is our right to elevate into a self-governing one, and why it's better to be self-governing through any vehicle, whether any one of the three is better than being a territory. And they're all very different statuses, and they all mean different things to us. And so I think it's definitely important that people understand all of those things, that there's a need to change our status. There's an immediate benefit and long-term benefits to changing our status. It's just kind of, you got to pick your path. How are we going to get to our end, or to our goal, and which road will we take? So, but yeah, I had a really good time on Saturday. I'm really glad that we got a chance to have a conversation with one of our leaders that, has a really great experience and a really, great perspective. And I feel like these moments are fleeting, because there are so many of our leaders that are just not with us anymore, and hopefully we've captured all, as much as we wanted to, and that, we can continue to tell their stories, and people can continue to learn from them. But, every day we're losing more and more elders, and that means losing more leaders, right? So we have to produce new leaders, and our new leaders got to be educated. So I look forward to all you young people out there. Yeah. Today actually kicks off the Youth Summer Internship Program that's being run by DYA. They're in partnership with Public Health. And so there's like teens all over the island that are running their orientations today. And they're going to be doing these internships. It's a 6-week internship. I believe they work I want to say it's 30 hours a week or something, a little less, right? They get out early. But it's a paid internship, a paid summer internship. Yeah. And it's cool because it gives a lot of these young people, access to the workplace and to work experience. And I feel like it's a good, some people argue that, you're just giving these kids a paycheck. But I argue that it's important for these kids to kind of go into a work environment and even just learn the little things, right? Like,
Yeah.
what is the expectation or the protocol when you show up at the office? Are you dressed appropriately? Are you ready for the work?
Yeah.
Do you know what your assignment is? Do you know who you check in with and check out with? You know, like if you don't sign your timesheet,
Yeah. That was kinda
I've met the students that are with DCA.
Oh,
We have a bunch of interns over at Department of Tomoto Affairs under the Guam Museum.
Okay.
Yeah, we're running this cool. One of our employees developed a program called the Guma Uli Tao.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, it's super exciting. And the idea is to kind of, provide this opportunity for young men in the same way that, or in a similar way, I shouldn't say the same, in a similar way that the Guma Uli Tao served that function in society, for boys to become men, right?
Yeah.
And so, of course, we're not in the traditional meeting house, unfortunately. One day I'm going to build one of those things. One day I'm going to build us a real Guma Uli Tao.
Wow.
Yeah, it'd be awesome. I'm going to put it in the Skinner Plaza. Anyway, but so the boys come in and we partner with a bunch of different organizations who provide cultural instruction, right? Culture-based instruction. And so it's neat. The kids get a chance to, learn a lot of the different cultural practices, but they also integrate into our workforce. And so, they'll be doing time at the Guam Museum, at the Tomoto Village, even at the Guam Cultural Repository. But, it's funny, when I met the young men this morning, I told them straight up, I was like, guys, if your timesheet is not signed, you're not getting paid.
Yeah.
Like, these are the things that you have
Those
to,
things,
yeah, the little things you got to learn. And
Yep.
I feel like, it's great. It's cool to talk to the young people after the internships are done, because it's, for a lot of them, even if it's not work that they're really passionate about or that they can see themselves doing, for a career,
Yeah.
they still appreciate the work site experience,
Yeah, it's
and
the
working
experience.
working with the adults, right?
Yeah.
And I like it. I think it's a cool thing. I hope that the program is able to continue. I know that this current administration was very supportive of aggressively pursuing this funding and using it for this purpose, and which I have to say is, despite the criticism, right, about how to use this grant money for this paid internship, I think it's also a really exciting thing to watch these young people get paid, because
yeah,
it's like,
they're gonna know.
yeah, different young people do
Yeah.
different things with their money.
Yes.
And it's a cool thing to see, what they prioritize,
Right.
and also how they contribute back into their families. Like, I have personally spoken to a few young folks who went through the internship who have told me that, oh, I didn't spend any of this money. Like, I just gave it all to my mom.
Wow.
Or my grandma or whatever, right?
Yeah.
I was like, wow. Like, man, bless
Yeah.
your soul. You sound like my dad. My dad always used to brag about that when I was a kid. My dad always used to say, boy, I got the merit scholarship when I graduate from high school, and so I had had my school paid for, and they gave him a stipend, and he always used to tell me, and I gave every penny of my stipend, my student stipend, to grandma.
Wow.
Like, hey, wow, no wonder why you're the favorite. You're the nanny, and you gave all your money,
Wow.
your college scholarship
Wow.
money, to your mom. You mama's boy. I love it. But it's cool to see that there's also this opportunity for these young people to have some experience with money management. And some kids just blow it. Like, there's only a few that's just like, I'm gonna buy a lot of sneakers with this.
Yeah.
And hey, you know what? I think that's also a part of the learning. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that I think comes out of it. Our office, the Commission on Decolonization, has had some interns. I mean, we're a small office, so we've never had more than, I think, 1 or 2 interns at a time. But and unfortunately, we don't have any this year. But the commission always gets involved with the youth summer interns over at the Department of Tomoto Affairs, and we try our best to ensure that they get this part of the education as well too. So a lot of good stuff happening. I hope that you guys get a chance to go down and check out the exhibit. We'll be announcing some other lectures as a part of the series that we got going on at the exhibit, and I hope that you get a chance to attend. But if you have not been on our website, it's www.dcall.guam.gov, and all of our educational resources are in digital format on the website. And you can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and we even got a YouTube channel with all of our video content. We got a caller on line 1. Hafide Kaduku, you're on the air.
Melvin WonPat Borja. They always said, when you see something, say something.
Yeah, airport
right?
rules. Yep.
They were so popular in that game when that kind of talk first came out, and it's like, I've been seeing something and saying something, but is anybody listening?
That's also a fair question.
Yeah, is Congress listening to us? We've been yelling for the last 75 years. Do you think they care? Or they care? They're like, they just play us round and round she goes, and where she goes, nobody knows.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the challenge, right, is that we've found ourselves in this position where we have engaged almost exclusively with the federal government, whether it's Congress, the White House, or other mechanisms, and yet, we're still kind of in the same place. And so I think a lot of people have been asking themselves that same question.
Yeah, and that's why they said, my dear Uncle Sam, won't you please come back to Guam? Nang matipatu Guam, lang na di tuloy-tuloy tanong mido. Nang pamakilo, lang na pinumis na free, lo matuloy-tuloy tanong for free. And then President Bush put a ban on fishing out in our ocean, made it a national moment, and Trump, with a stroke of the pen, said the bans off, we're going to allow commercial fishing, or is that commercial mining?
Right.
Do you get it?
Yeah, and that's, I think that's at the core of our issue, right, is that we clearly are not in control of our own resources over our own territory. And so, I think it's undeniable when you see these examples that, Guam is not fully self-governing. We're self-governing to a degree, but not self-governing enough in order to really make decisions that we think impact us. And that's a great example. The Marine Monument is absolutely, classic example of how the federal government maintains unilateral control over Guam and our natural resources.
Well, we got no more national monument out there because Trump said, because he said so, you do as I say and say as I do. Right. And, hey, man, just because you couldn't do it over there in the Strait of Hormuz, you're going to come and do it here? Because if I had an army, we'll be talking something else. But, man, and we die for America, bro. We're the most loyal, law-abiding machine the world's ever seen. We wear that uniform with honor and pride, and they play this game on us. Can they please stop playing that game with us, man? Because we got to live and die here, too, bro. And some of us just want to die in peace, but the way things are going, homes, land, rent, going to the store, $500,000 homes, where are we going with this, man? You think they can relocate some of us to Kentucky and we'll let them take the whole land they want, and we'll come back decades later after they're done doing each other out here, and maybe we can live in it again, maybe not, but I don't want to be caught in the crossfire no more, Melvin. I want to be a spectator. I want to be in Kentucky watching them do each other out here, because that's what's going to happen when all hell breaks loose, man, and they say it's not going to happen. Trust me, they got all them heavy-duty weapons of mass destruction. They're going to want to use it, and I don't want to be here when they use it, because in my mother's time and her mother's time, they can run and hide. We ain't running nowhere. We ain't hiding nowhere. Our kids, they're going to, whoa, they've never seen bombs like they've seen them before, and that's just a conventional bomb, man, and we need to be in the outside looking in, because let me tell you, this is not going to be a nice place to be living when they do it, and we got no say-so, and with liberty and justice for all, and tada din middle liberty and tada justice, lang napangogi, lang napamakilu, what's going on here, man? Because we gave up every blood, sweat, and tears for that flag, and this is what they do to us out there. With all due respect, sir, Admiral, whoever you are, come on, man. Can you hear and listen to what we're saying? Because we just want to be a friend and live in peace. And we'll tell you what, we'll make it 60-40, and you guys can have the 60, and we'll take the 40. Because right now we're at 0. That's not nice, man. And you said you fight for freedom. Well, we've been fighting for freedom. So Melvin, anyway, I want to listen to you, bro. You just keep on doing what you're doing, bro. And maybe one day a miracle might happen, and with a stroke of a pen, we might be free.
Zeus Moasi, senor. I appreciate the comments.
Thank you very much.
You have a great day. Adios, senor. Thank you to Senor Kaduku for the call. If you're interested in getting involved in the discussion, the number is 922-1051 or 922-1052. You can WhatsApp the 51 number. I gotta apologize to our listeners that usually tune in on Instagram. It's my boo-boo. I forgot the iPad today. I forgot the iPad today, and so we're not running the Instagram stream. My bad. But you can still stream us on the YouTube. The Wave YouTube is live.
Wave 105.1 FM Guam.
There you go. Yeah. So if you're not on the YouTube stream, you can get it there. But
we also have our radio app, Glimpses of Guam, which is
completely
free. Yeah, if you don't have a radio, if you don't have the conventional radio, just search us on the App Store.
There you go.
It's free.
Get on the App Store. It's free.
Yeah.
Yes, live streaming. I love it. I gotta say, I really love that that talk radio is still for real in Guam. Talk radio is kind of a dying medium, or on the actual radio waves, because podcasts are like the thing now.
Yep.
And it's kind of like a survival necessity for traditional radio to also have a streaming option,
right?
Because a lot of people are just they're not walking around with these things with the antenna. Yeah. I got check this thing out.
Yeah, Pauly's radio. I love it. I love how retro it is.
It has an antenna.
Yeah.
I know you can't see this in Radio Land, but if you're on the stream, Pauly got this cool little desk radio with an antenna and the knobs and everything. I love it.
Yeah.
Man, I remember when I was a kid, when I was like a teenager, I used to stay up late and wait for they had this national broadcast that used to play a bunch of hip hop that was not being played on the radio at that time. I remember I used to call like the DJs, like the local DJs, and be like, "Hey, can you play Wu-Tang?" And they're like, "Man, we can't play that on the radio." I'm like, "Come on, man." It's so funny. And so I would wait. Like the only people that's gonna play the Biggie Smalls song was gonna be on this some city radio, urban radio that they would just run the feed on late at night on the weekends. And so I would stay up late, and I have my cassette record. I'm totally aging myself right now.
It's okay. I'm the same.
Put my tape deck out. You know what I mean? And I hit record when the song comes on. I'm like, yes.
That's before we can burn CDs.
Yep, way before CD burning, man. Oh, CD burning changed everything.
It did.
Yeah. I thought mini disc was going to be a real thing, but mini disc never really took on, unfortunately. But yeah, I wanted to circle back to what our last caller. One of the things our last caller mentioned about this marine monument. This is a really interesting issue, but I think it's unfortunate, but it's a great example, and why I think everybody need to kind of tune in and get involved in this thing, because first of all, when the monument was the monument was first built, this National Marine Monument, which is pretty much over the trench, right, the Marianas Trench, and it's in our fishing grounds. And so George Bush signed this monument into order, right, and it was even at that point it was contentious. At least among us, right? At a local level, there are a lot of people who are concerned about the monument, because what would the declaration of this monument, what would it mean to our native fishing rights? And native fishing rights is always a touchy subject. I mean, even here, at a local front, when they're right now, they're going around doing kind of public outreach and information briefing and data collecting around on what are we going to do collectively in terms of fishing regulations, right? Like they're talking about some of the proposals include like full nighttime ban, night fishing ban, or night fishing supposed to be banned already.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's still a lot of people who are out fishing at night.
Yeah.
And so, even at a local level, it's a challenge, right? Because this is obviously a touchy subject. We're talking about a food source here, right? Like nobody owns the ocean. And so we all own the ocean. And you know what I mean? This is ours to protect, but it's supposed to provide for all of us. And, indigenous peoples of the Pacific, this is built into every Pacific culture, right? It's like, how do we live in balance and how do we coexist with the ocean? How does it, feed us and sustain us, and how do we help protect it? And so, fishing, any discussion on fishing regulations is always touchy in the islands. And so even when Bush first, made the call for National Marine Monument, there are a lot of people who are upset about it. And for me, I'm also, I feel like for me personally, I'm also very torn. Right, like I agree. I on one hand, I think that the indigenous people of the area who have harvested that ocean, that those oceans for centuries, like they should be the ones to steward them. And in the same breath, I also think that we do need to have regulations because not everybody follows a cultural system.
Yeah.
We
cannot be the Wild West here.
Yeah, right. But at the same time, right, like. This is also why, going back, why I think indigenous people are the appropriate stewards, because there's preservation and protection values that are built into our cultural protocol already. Yeah. Like for example, if you somebody texts me and like give me the accurate citation here, but in Tomoro culture, we use a 13-month calendar, right? Because we follow the lunar cycle.
Yeah.
And there's each cycle or each phase of the cycle is named appropriately for what nature is telling us to do. Like there's certain times of the year where we are preparing the land for farming, or certain times of the year when we are fishing inside the reef and fishing outside the reef, or fishing for certain things. Like there's even 1 month, man, somebody please give me the fact check here. I'm just
checking it right now.
But there's 1 month there where it's specifically designated for like, that's when you harvest mahi, because that's when they're running.
Okay.
And of course, like you don't harvest them when they're spawning.
Yeah.
Right? You harvest them when they're in abundance. And so, there's every culture has this, right? Like I'll never forget when I went to Palau this one year, right? And my host was his family are turtle hunters, and like in Palau, turtles are like people still harvest them, but they're also still protected, right? So you don't want to be like the conservation officers are for real.
Yeah.
But the conservation officers, they don't even bother with the family that are turtle hunters, because that, and the family, to their credit, like they harvest according to the rules, like the Palauan rules, you know what I mean? The cultural rules, which I think is a super cool thing. And if you look around the world, all of these sustainability movements are now are targeting indigenous communities and indigenous knowledge as a way to build a framework for sustainable practices. And it's simple logic, right? I mean, a lot of these communities have survived in islands with limited natural resources for hundreds of years, in our case, thousands of years. And so I think it's appropriate and it's awesome to see that, indigenous knowledge is kind of getting its day in the sun. But how far, how invested are we in it is yet to be seen. So going back to the monument, I think one of the things that's frustrating is that it was already contentious. But what it did do is it ban commercial fishing, which we all kind of on board with, right? We're all on board with controlling and protecting our resources from commercial exploitation through commercial fishing, but we don't want that to infringe on our native rights. And so, it wasn't perfect, but the ban, I think the ban and regulations on commercial fishing, I think were welcomed by a lot of us. And so now, just recently, Trump enacted or lifted the ban on commercial fishing. And so we're in another time, right? Another phase of this where things are getting getting hairy for us. Oh, here you go. Oh, it's my wife. Thanks, hon. March is
the one for the Minyan.
Umatalaf Manyahak. Is that's the reference? But yeah, so March is one of the times when it's time to catch a fish. And what is the fish that they harvest during that time? Do you know?
I was looking and it said
Manyahak.
That's what I was looking at.
All the pescador are like, duh, Melvin.
I don't know.
My dad would be slapping me right now.
I'm trying to research while you were
My
talking.
dad would totally be slapping me. All my dad's family is all fishermen.
Yeah, no, and then even I think there was something too that he's taking away those ocean monitoring.
Yeah, right.
Those scientific. How they're monitoring climate change, but
right.
He's taking it away. Like
yeah, and so he says that a lot of these bans are not necessary in order to, protect the resources and also protect the intellectual knowledge, right? Or the intellectual property and historical value of these areas. And so, obviously this is, I think it's pretty, he didn't directly say it, but I think it's pretty clear that, they're trying to boost the U.S. economy in a time when the economy is obviously struggling.
Yeah.
People, I mean, it's definitely exacerbated here in Guam and I'm sure in the other territories, but even people in the nation are struggling with a really high cost of living and a really low quality of life right now.
Yep.
And so, and a lot of it leads back to the economy. So I think it's pretty clear that the president is taking his swing at trying to stimulate the American economy. And if you look at the way that they're running these commercial fishing regulations, it's exclusive to U.S. fishers, and foreign vessels are only authorized to transport U.S. fisher catches, and so they can't fish. They can help transport the catch, but they can't fish. And so and it's tough, man, because like how many of these big U.S. companies are Tsamoru owned, and how much of this money that's generated from the fish caught in our waters between us and the CNMI, how much of that profit is going back to Guam and the CNMI? And so I think I'm not gonna act like I'm the scientist here, Kay, or even the political expert on this particular issue or fisheries, but from the perspective of decolonization, right, and the role that we play, the way that I look at this is just another example of why political status is so important to us, and why being fully self-governing is so critical, because this is literally we're doing one of two things, right? We're either we're disempowered from protecting a resource, something that's really important to us. And on the other side, if that resource is going to be exploited, then we should define the terms, and be the sole benefactor of that exploitation. And it's not to say, okay, I'm not saying that we should exploit our natural resources, but I am saying that when a community decides this for themselves, that they should be in the driver's seat, and it shouldn't be dictated by someone else, by outsiders. And that's precisely what is happening here. You know, here's a president that we don't vote for that's signing an executive order to, you know, to lift this commercial fishing ban. And we don't have any meaningful representation within the U.S. political system to fight that. Like whatsoever. I mean, even if our delegates like went and like picketed at the White House or in Congress, like these are people that don't vote in Congress. We don't have a vote in the Senate. We don't influence a presidential election. We don't even have, you know, local based commercial fishing. And so, you know, I think it's highly problematic. And you could apply the, you know, the very same principles to deep sea mining. And so the way I see it is that, you know, if as a community we decide, yes, we want to exploit our natural resources, and we want to make a profit out of it, we should be the ones to define what that looks like. And we shouldn't have to wheel and deal to figure out if we're going to get our fair cut of it, you know. I always kind of laugh whenever I listen to Senor Kaduku. Thank you again for the call. One of the things that he always says is the 60-40, right?
Yeah, the 60-40.
You take the 60 and we'll take the 40.
Yeah.
I always joke with him, no deal. No deal. I don't want 40. I want it all. I want it all. I want it all, and then we negotiate down from there. My starting give is 5%. 5%, take it or leave it. And, you know, if you run a hard enough bargain, then maybe I'll give you 7. But, you know, the point is that it's all, you know, all jokes aside, I think that the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, today we negotiate from a dispossessed standpoint, right? It's almost like we haven't had 100% in like hundreds of years.
Right.
We haven't been 100% for hundreds of years, and we haven't been sovereign for 500 years. I mean, and so in a lot of ways, you know, it's almost like our institutional memory has been erased. We don't remember what it was like anymore to be in control of that which rightfully belongs to us. We've been dispossessed for so long, you know, but I think, and that's why I think that for some people it's hard. Decolonization is a tough concept because it requires some imagination. But even at that, man, I mean, even if your imagination is not great,
yeah,
you need not look far, my friends. I mean, there are nations right next door in Micronesia, you know, that were not self-governing and now are freely associated, and they negotiate with the United States like equals. You know, and I think that's a beautiful thing. It's a powerful thing.
Isn't that the talk on Saturday or the upcoming?
Yeah,
with
so
Dr. Underwood?
Right. So Dr. Underwood will be doing the next 2 lectures. The first will be this Friday, and then the second one will follow the following day on Saturday. And so, he's going to be talking about the Commonwealth era, which is was a really exciting time for Guam in the sense that, you know, this was something that the people were really, they were on board because they saw it happen.
Yeah.
Right. They just saw it with CNMI.
Right.
And so it was this exciting thing to think like, wow, this is elevating our level of self-government is within reach because we just saw it happen with our closest neighbor. And I think that's a super, super cool thing. And I want to just thank Dr. Congressman Underwood in advance for agreeing to do this. Again, I got to say, you know, I get excited anytime that there's an opportunity for us to hear from our elders and our leaders in this way. And I got to say, like, just my personal opinion, I really love retired Congressman Underwood. Don't get me wrong. Congressman Underwood, I would say he's my favorite, but my mom will smack me. So my grandpa has to be my favorite. But It's like 1A and B. Dr. Underwood was awesome as a congressman.
Yeah.
But I got to say, I really enjoy in retired Congressman Underwood, because retired Congressman Underwood has like a much more forgiving filter. It's just like, oh, I'm just going to tell you like it is. And I'm not running for anything right now. So you might not like this, but I'm going to tell you anyway.
Right.
I love it. It's the best. It's the best. It's awesome to be able to talk to somebody who, has in a previous part of their life has had to be really mindful of the things that they say publicly. And then all of a sudden it's like all bets are off. And I can appreciate that, because I'm in the opposite. I used to be able to just say whatever I want, and now I got to like watch myself. And I behave myself at all times. Let's keep it PG, man. I act like I'm on the radio all the time and not let my potty mouth come out. But yeah, anytime that we get to conversate with our elders, I'm super excited. And I think that, I think a lot of people can benefit from hearing this perspective. I know we're coming up on the top of the hour, but just reminded me of one of the things that that former Speaker Cruz said at his lecture yesterday, or on Saturday, was that when people say that we should draft a constitution, that it's the logical thing to do, that it's something that we're just kind of passing on this opportunity, he argued against that and said that historically even the United States didn't do it that way. And I thought it was just so funny, because yeah, you're right. It was nobody asked. The United States didn't ask the Brits to draft a constitution.
Right.
And they first declared their independence, and then they wrote their constitution. And so I think it's hypocritical for us, for the United States to say, oh, you can only do it this way. We have to give you permission to write a constitution. And so I think that, the important thing for us is to declare our sovereignty, which we have never surrendered. We didn't agree. We didn't say yes. You can be sovereign Spain, or you can be sovereign United States. We never agreed to that. And so, I think that that's the important piece that a lot of us forget, is that, we never surrendered our sovereignty. Therefore, we are still sovereign, whether it's recognized or not. I think the point remains that this is our homeland, and we are the rightful sovereign. We should assert that. And, whatever political status we choose in a self-determination referendum, great. Let's rock and roll. But those have to be the starting points, right? Sovereignty now. Anyhow, now we are at the top of the hour, and we're going to take a real quick break. You've been tuned into the Challenge the Status Quo on Wave 105.1 FM, and we will be right back.
AP News for Friday, June 12th. I'm Ed Donahue. Elon Musk's SpaceX made its debut on Wall Street today. The stock soared 19%. It turns Musk into the first ever trillionaire.
And let me tell you, if people had told me this was going to happen, I was like, man, you must be smoking some really good crack. Because I think this company's going to fail.
Forbes estimates Musk, who was also a major shareholder in Tesla, is now worth $1.1 trillion. Elon Musk says SpaceX is going public because it needs money to fund its ambitions of putting satellites and data centers in space and eventually establishing a colony of people on Mars. Pakistan's prime minister says the United States and Iran have agreed to a final text for a peace deal. Scaffolding is up at the Kennedy Center in Washington to remove President Trump's name from the building. A judge rejected a request to pause a court-ordered deadline to remove references to the president from the building and other aspects of the Kennedy Center's operations. Board member, Ohio Democratic Congresswoman Joyce Beatty says this is not over.
Of course, they're going to fight us every bit of the way. There's going to be a legal fight.
A federal judge ruled the White House is allowed to stage a UFC show this weekend in an elaborate ring already built on the south lawn of the White House to celebrate the nation's 250th anniversary on President Trump's 80th birthday. The The president said today a swift and lethal kinetic U.S. strike has killed Hector Rustenford Guerrero Flores, whom he calls the infamous leader of the Tren de Aragua gang. Officials in Maryland are criticizing Immigration and Customs Enforcement for arresting a man and woman outside of a Baltimore elementary school as preschoolers, kindergartners, and their families arrived for an end-of-school ceremony. This is AP News. Artist David Hockney has died at the age of 88.
David Hockney's paintings of pools shimmering in the Los Angeles sunshine and colourful iPad drawings have become icons of 20th century art. Over a 7-decade career, Hockney explored and reimagined classical portraiture, landscape painting and pop art, working in painting, collage, photography and digital drawing. He was born in the north of England, but lived much of his life in Southern California, making its sun-drenched suburban views a major motif. Later in life, he returned to Europe, finding renewed inspiration in the wooded hills of Yorkshire and the fields and trees of France's Normandy region. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
Authorities in Texas say a man who opened fire in a shooting that left 1 dead and 10 injured had shot at police just days earlier during a chase. They say he began firing shots at officers and bystanders in Midland, Texas, before barricading himself inside an abandoned veterinary clinic. I'm Ed Donahue, AP News.
KGUM FM, Dedito. Powered by Glimpses Media.
When a warrior faces adversity, he fights through it. He finds a way. Freedom isn't free. Rolling strong. Belief. Believe you can, and you will.
Wheelchairs for Warriors provides mobility solutions to veterans and first responders injured in the line of duty. Join the mission and visit wheelchairsforwarriors.org.
Half a day. This is Luella Lucino, host of Pinas de Guam. Together with the Filipino community of Guam and Wave 105.1, we proudly celebrate Philippine Independence Month with the theme Kalayaan, Kinabukasan, Kasaysayan, Freedom, Future, History. From Guam to the Philippines, we honor our shared history, celebrate our freedom, and build our future together. Mabuhay ang Pilipinas at Guam!
Wave 105, keeping Guam informed, inspired, and in the conversation. Glimpses Media.
Why be at the forefront of childhood cancer research? At St. Jude, we do it because every innovation we make is a moment we give to children with cancer everywhere. But we can't do it without you. Help St. Jude give children with cancer more moments. Moments that can last a lifetime. Learn more at stjude.org.
This Father's Day, treat Dad to an unforgettable dinner at Roots Hills Grill House. June 19 through June 21. Enjoy a 3-course menu with premium steak, fresh seafood, and sweet finishes. $90 per person. Reserve your table and celebrate Dad in style.
The road to Adelup is off and running. This time, we sit down with Republican candidate Speaker Frank Blass and Dr. Mary Okada. Catch the full conversation that took place on May 7th on the Wave 105's YouTube channel. Stay informed and hear their vision for Guam's future. Wave 105 is a glimpse of Guam radio station.
Stay sharp, stay curious, stay connected. Wave 105, the talk of Guam. Glimpses Media.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the show hosts, guests, and callers, and do not necessarily reflect the views of the staff or management of Wave 105.1 FM, Glimpses Media, or our partners. We strive to provide quality, respectful, and engaging content, and we welcome you to participate in the conversation. Thank you for tuning in to Wave 105.1 FM. Enjoy the show.
KGUM FM, Wave 105.1, the talk of Guam. It's 11:06 a.m. on this Monday, June 15, 2026. We have Challenge the Status Quo, hosted by the Director of the Commission on Decolonization, Mr. Melvin WonPat Borja. Join our conversation where we provide information and the discussion on the ongoing movement to decide Guam's political status. Our Wave studio line is 671-922-1051, 1052. We'd love for you to join in. KGUM FM, Wave 105.1, the Talk of Guam.
All right. And we're back for the back end half hour or back half hour. Not half an hour, but second hour half. That's even more confusing. We left off the last hour talking a little bit about this lifting of restrictions in the National Marine Monument. And I wanted to give it a little bit more due here. So I went on the whitehouse.gov that put out a statement, a fact sheet for the President Trump. It's called President Trump Restores American Commercial Fishing in the Pacific. And so we were talking about how, earlier that this is, pretty clear that this is a move to stimulate the American economy, right? Which they're not shy about at all. As part of their fact sheet, they say this is putting America first in seafood competitiveness. President Trump is committed to removing unnecessary restrictions on American fishermen in order to enhance U.S. domestic seafood production and lower seafood prices, support American jobs, and promote food and national security. And in it, it basically talks about, one of the points is that it says prohibiting commercial fishing is not necessary for the proper care and management of these monuments, as many fish species are highly migratory, not unique to the area, and are already protected through existing laws such as the Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Conservation and Management Act. And then the third point in this says, prohibiting commercial fishing in this area also artificially restricts domestic fish supply, which makes the United States reliant on foreign sources for our food supply and increases the cost of seafood for everyday Americans. And I just can't help but feel my stomach turn in the irony of all of this. You know what I mean? Especially for us in Guam. I mean, this is literally our backyard.
Right.
This is literally our centuries-old bread basket, food basket. And Guam is in a period now where we're 90% dependent on imported food. Mm-hmm. I mean, it always baffles me when I think about that. How prior to World War II, Guam was 90% self-sufficient in regard to food. 90% of the food that we ate was grown here. Everything from, produce to livestock, and of course fishing. Mm-hmm. And now after the war, we've become 90% dependent on imported food. And it's crazy when I think about that, and it, before the kind of knee-jerk reaction to this was, oh, well, that's because all these Chamorros are lazy and they don't want to farm no more. Mm-hmm. But that's obviously not the case, because there are a lot of farmers on Guam these days. And granted, yes, we need more farmers, absolutely. Farms equal food, period. But if you look at Guam, and the Samoa people, and the larger footprint of our history, there's always been this cooperation and balance, right, between how we source food from the land and from the ocean, and how those two resources, have sustained us for thousands of years. And when you listen to the language in this fact sheet, it's clear that this is, they use a lot of us and our, right, for our food sources, our food security, our economy. And, we're Guam, we're supposed to be a part of that our and that we, but we're not. We're clearly not. How is this going to bring down the cost of seafood for us? How is this going to affect our economy? How is it going to stimulate our economy locally? And if the resource is in our backyard, then shouldn't we benefit from that? I mean, I think we should.
Yeah.
I mean, I think right off the bat, Tomorrow should get a cut, like, of everything. You're gonna take in our waters, like, we get a cut, man. This is basic economics, man. Even the street kids know this kind of economics, you know what I mean? Do business in my hood, we get a cut. And so, when I'm not the expert on any of this, like on the any of this marine monument action. I'm not a scientist by any stretch, but I can't help it. I was having a conversation with Yuli in the hallway before we started the show. So we were talking about this, and I was telling Yuli that I can't help it, but it feels a lot to me like Le Texan. Like when the land was returned, when the land was deemed as excess, and was supposed to be given back to the people, and likely it would have been returned to the government of Guam. But in the last moment, this is in the 90s. In the final hours, U.S. Fish and Wildlife swept in and was like, no, we want to make this a nature preserve, and we want to protect endangered species. And when, for me, I'm one of these Chamorros, when I hear preserve, I'm like, yeah, that sounds cool. I like protecting native species. I like protecting our native animals and protecting our ecosystem. But there are a lot of activists in the 90s who are like, yeah, we want to protect native species too, but we're against this nature preserve. And they said specifically that they didn't like the nature preserve because they felt like it was just an excuse to keep the land in the control of the federal government, because it was federal U.S. Fish and Wildlife, right? It wasn't like Guam EPA that was given the land to have a nature preserve. And, and it became contentious, right? It ended up kind of pitting our people against each other, whereas like, some of our own people are like, oh, we're not down with those activists because you guys hate the koku. You guys are anti-CHEC, and I can't get down with that. You guys just want to build a beach resort there, whatever. And but a lot of activists held the line and said, no, this is just an excuse to maintain control of this land. And lo and behold, so many years later, here we are. Like, I'll never forget when we won on Pauget, because Pauget was like, I thought the plan for Pauget was atrocious. I feel like even the military knew that. Like when the military started rolling it out and we started they started saying these things out loud, right? Their plan for Pauget, you could even see on the feds' faces, they're like, oh man, who wrote this? Sounds terrible, guys. Like, nobody's ever gonna get down with this. We could never call ourselves stewards of the environment after this. You know what I mean? We can't even hide it. And it was so bad. Like, so bad, the way that they proposed building this firing range in Pauget. And when we ended up going to court. The lawsuit was filed by the Trust and Earth Justice, and we won on the protection of this native critical habitat for the 8-spot butterfly. And so I remember this so clearly, that it was such an exciting time. We won. Holy cow, we won. We won, and we were able to tell the federal government, nope, you can't build this firing range. It is illegal. It was crazy, to be able to flex on the feds like that. That was exciting, super exciting. We were celebrating. My family was celebrating, but then that victory was so short-lived, because once they said, okay, the writing is on the wall, we're not going to be able to do this firing range in Pauget. Right when they said that, they turned right around and was like, all right, we're going to build it in Le Texan, and we still own this thing. And all they did was, it's really the preserve is really in the surface danger zone. Yeah. But it's relevant because you can't have the live fire training happening without clearing the surface danger zone. And I just thought it was so heartbreaking. Like even just for me as an individual, okay? I was one of these people that was super excited when they finally opened the gate. They're like, all right, you guys can come and swim at Le Texan. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to open the gate. You guys can come in here, but only from 8 o'clock to 4. Yeah. And if you don't get out by 4, then we're locking your truck in here. You just kind of had to get over that part if you wanted to see it. And I was one of those people that was like, I don't even care. I don't even care. I'm going to let these federal fish and wildlife officers like harass me and like be all rude and stuff. Not all of them. Some of them are cool. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to deal with it just so I can see this beautiful place, this magical place. If you've never been to Letexan, do yourself a favor and go. If you are a Tamoru, you owe it to yourself, to your soul, to go to Letexan. You never been to Letexan? Go.
Real.
For real. It's like you're going to Okudu. Just go like you're going to Okudu High School and just stay on the left. You go veer left when you get to the golf course. Yeah, they got a golf course if you didn't know that. That's also insulting. But, Letexan is a magical place. And, it was such a heartbreaking thing to finally get to make it a thing. Like, I could just take my kids and we can go see it and swim in the water and hike the trail and see the lati and see the lusung that's, like, embedded along the cliff line. I mean, it is amazing. And then it's like it was just gone in an instant. Like, oh, by the way, we're going to be shooting the 50 cal up here. We're going to blow some stuff up.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it was just so rough. And so, and that's how I think, that's what I think. That's how, that all of that trauma is like resurrected when I was reading this EO from Trump, opening up the monument for commercial fishing. Because it's like, finally there is some sense of protection of our fishing resources in the original establishment of the monument, even as problematic as it may have been. I mean, there's something there. And then all of a sudden, it's just like, boom, gone. Because we want to stimulate American economy. We want to create American jobs. We want to bring down the cost of seafood for Americans. The Americans, all of the Americans except those in the territories.
Yeah.
Those who should stand to benefit the most are probably not going to benefit at all. And I just think that that's whack. And if you think that's whack, then you probably want to be self-governing like me. You probably want a better status. And any one of these statuses, we could figure out a better way. And obviously some of them are different, stronger in other places and other aspects, and how we apply it and how we enforce and uphold our sovereignty and our ability to decide for ourselves. And, not every status is created equal, but what we know for sure is that we're never getting there as a territory. Never, ever, ever getting there as a territory. And, I feel like that's pretty black and white.
Yeah.
And does not require extensive debate. Anyway, I got Senor Kaduku is back on the call. He's on line 1. Hafaday, Senor, you're on the air. Hello?
Dispensado, I'm already. Oh, go. I'm a man, uncle, and I'll bring you back in time. My grandmother, she used to tell me, "Oh no, boy, gising tatis and check that." Kabagwa da gwa puntang kalamasa, gwa mindioka, suni, dogu, doni, you name it. We lived off the land back in time. You can leave your Zoris outside and I won't even leave my G-string outside anymore. Yeah, back in time, man, those were the days you can go to the store and get a Coke for a quarter. Here we are now. They said about farming and all. The only thing I want to farm out there is what the rhino beetle don't like.
Hey.
Because he hits everything, not just the coconut trees. And it's getting hotter than hot. My pea Guam is hot.
Yeah, it really is.
Sometimes you don't even want to go out there to farm anymore because the heat alone will give you heat stroke. You're my age, Matayal Gilzum Pawan and from farmers. Farm what? Our water's contaminated. Our jungle's contaminated. Our fish are contaminated. Our waterlands are contaminated as we speak. So what we did was, for all the money that they've given us and we've seen, all we did was create a monster and turn this island into a tombstone. And trying to fix it, they've broken it so hard that good luck, and we're going to keep on trying because we need to fix it for our next generation and for our grandkids. Where are they going to go, man? They don't want to leave home to go live somewhere else.
Right.
But if they have to, they're going to have to, because they're just going to keep on destroying this rock, because we are America's front line out on this side, the sticks against her enemies, Russia, North Korea, and China, and we're protecting the continental United States out here. And what's in it for us? Diplomatic community, the immunity, no liberty, no nothing. I pledge allegiance, ni pledge kontumalago mo, panugi tomorrow lang na pamakilu. And here we are now, man, and I seen it all. I think I got PTSD syndrome. I didn't have to go to Vietnam to get it. I got it here. And I'm just saying, man, where are our kids and our grandkids going to go? And when them rockets start flying, tak them sinanon and opian and nonam and malogu pagutim palogu to where? Pagda Guinea underground shelter, Pagda Nipom. Oh, even here's a siren. This is not a drill. This is not a drill. Right out there to the road and stand pretty. Because we ain't got nowhere to go, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. I would rather that they ship all our manamku and all our women and children, buy them a one-way ticket to Kentucky and give them some homestead out there, and we'll open up a 105.1 out there and open up our own radio station out there, and we'll watch from the outside in, watch them do what they're going to do, because they're going to do what they do like they're, where's that, Madru, Steve, you can hit that coconut tree over there, son. They call them guys nuclear nomads because they got no home to go back to. One day that's what's going to happen here, and I'm hoping and praying that it doesn't happen, but a miracle is going to have to fall into place, because the next rules now, I'm going to burn it this time. I'm getting kicks into place. I do them, and I put all we must make good and put us we. Man, we've always lived in peace, and bulat and manadan it, and maybe we should take that plane ticket to Kentucky and give us a homestead, and we can watch on the outside in. We don't want to be caught in the crossfire anymore. So we got no place to run anyway. Stick us out with Bigfoot. We got more chance out there, and because this island, I don't know, Melvin. I hope in your time and whatever that we can fix it just a little bit, because they've got to seek, conquer, divide, destroy, man. They're in the process of destroying us, and they know how to do it, man. They know how to play that game. They're always 20 years in advance. And every time we try to fix something, that something else gets thrown at us and pretty soon we don't know. And a lot of times some of our people are involved in this, and I hate to say it, but they don't just the book by its cover, so I'm gonna buy the cover undercover. And it is what it is, man. Sometimes just a plane flying over my house, and I can't hear anything anymore. I'm wondering if I can apply for hearing aids. Just to buy a hearing aid costs $5,000. Part of the air pollution or noise pollution, or we fight for America, man. Ever since every war, every fight, we spill our blood. And they play that game with us. That's not nice, man. I thought we were friends. Maybe one day you'll be my friend when I say you're my friend. But right now, you're my kadwa. Pretend to be friend. So do as I say and say as I do, and we'll be just fine. Pamakilu. Ana line, that's what it told me, school to Panogi and Quintusa. You get a right to speech, then the only right you guys have right to remain silent. Anyway, Melvin, hey man, you're a good guy, bro. Good dispenser. Sometimes I'm kind of like out whack or don't know what I'm talking about. I got PTSD, man. I don't know which way to turn anymore, and it's because of what's going on, man. It's called brain slap. She conquered the band and go walk and pick up the pieces after they do each other. Nami like the mongi man, guyan mongi. Igualo no mga malago sa tungo bumoke dun na guyan apa tu titanium steel or ekko apa tu gaji disung ni madodom di And it is what it is, man. And a lot of us wear that uniform of honor, and we go fight, man. And they still play that game with us, man. Where do we turn to? United Nations? I don't know, but we need to do something soon because we are losing. We've lost control, and we need to put in a Guam Museum past, present, and future, and take pictures of our family, and they're living in the bus stop. $500,000 home per money they got to, and I'll settle for a bus stop. But it gets real hot, man. Maybe they're tearing down too much jungle. But anyway, it is what it is, man. And hey, you're a good guy, bro. And I remember you since way back when you were still Melvin and your sister and your mom, and your grandpa, and WonPat. And I like Underwood too, and Ben Pangilinan and the food too. I miss my friend, man. But let's just keep, because we're the kind of people, we don't give up. We're just going to keep on, even if there's only one of us. We're already old and brittle, man. Some of us don't even want to fight anymore. Can you just do it for Stoke Defense like you do everywhere else? Hey, thank you, Melvin.
Diyos Masi, senyor. That's what we're here for. The number is 922-1051 or 1052. That's what I love about this format. You know, it's I was one of those kids that grew up listening to talk radio.
Oh.
Yeah, back when it was K57.
Oh, yeah, the K57.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, that's all we listened to.
Wasn't it on AM station before?
Yep.
I remember because my uncle used to be.
That's why it was K57 because it was AM 570.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
Yep, and that's all we ever listened to when I was a kid. And when I was little, we used to, we live in Malolo, but we went to school in Jigo.
Wow.
Because my mom was working at FB Middle School.
I see.
And so, like, I went to elementary school at Jigo Elementary.
Wow.
Before, what is it now? Marshall Sublime? Something like that, I think. But yeah, the home of the Fanihi, whoop whoop. And so we listened to the drive from Malolo to Jigo. We just listened to talk radio, either K57 or 610 when they used to do the Tomoru talk radio with Sus Tomoru. Oh man, yeah, that was awesome. But that's all. That I always felt like that was the cool thing about the format was that people love to engage. They want to have a discussion. They want to talk to different people.
Yeah.
They want to kind of put it out there.
Oh, I wanted to bring this up just because I know. Have you ever heard of Radio Garden?
No.
So Radio Garden is basically, you can get the app or you can just use it on your browser. But anyways, it is like, how do I describe this? It's basically radio stations of the world.
Oh, cool.
So you can because this is like.
So whatever stations have a stream.
Yeah. So it's like
curated.
it shows you the globe and you can search the globe, go everywhere. Like, oh, I want to go here. And,
Does it include college radios?
Man, I think it's,
like anything that has a frequency, right?
I believe so.
And a stream.
Yeah.
Man, I always used to trip out when I was in college at UH. I was one of the DJs on KTUH.
Ah.
Yeah, it used to be my late night Friday night gig.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to play hip hop at a hip hop show. It's fun.
Okay.
But I always used to trip out because there was like a bunch of people who would listen on our internet stream. And they're like listening from somewhere across the world, like in Switzerland or something.
Right.
Yeah, something weird. Like it's just, it just so happened that like my late night show was like their mid-afternoon show. And they're just like locked in, like, oh, they want to listen to, whatever underground hip hop we were playing. But it's so interesting, how like college radio is kind of like rebel radio. They play all the weird, like obscure stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember our production manager always used to tell us that because our slogan at KTUH was Hawaii's only alternative. And so they always used to bag on us like, hey, if you're playing any of that top 40, you're out. Like we're replacing you. Like let those other guys play that. That's what they play. We are Hawaii's only alternative. Play the alternative. And it was super fun. And they used to have this thing called Monday Night Live. Okay. Oh man, Monday Night Live was awesome because they had like an in-house studio. And then there's like a little bar restaurant outside the station. And so they would either do a studio set with a band, or they would play out in the courtyard
Oh,
near
that's
the
cool, yeah.
yeah. So it's like a live show, and they're just
Wow.
streaming the thing. Oh, it's fun. That's how I first heard Ukla the Mock. Ukla the Mock was like, I know there's somebody out there that Ukla the Mock's pretty popular on Guam.
So Tiny Desk concert kind of
Yeah, and like that's how I first started hearing those guys, was at KTUH
Wow.
when they were like super unknown.
Okay.
And now they're like big time. And, you get like some crazy fan at the front every show screaming, "Play Hellfire! Play Hellfire!" Oh man. But yeah, I really enjoyed the format. They would even play like a bunch of cool like news or like political talk show kind of stuff. Yeah, a lot of fun. And radio on Guam is a lot of times like the music stations, a lot of them play kind of the same set of music,
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're like a niche station. But talk radio, you get something different. And that's one of the things I really love about what's going on with the Wave programming is there's a lot of different community-based programming on the Wave.
Yes.
And you can get a lot of cool stuff. Yeah. So big up to the Wave. And, of course, thank you to the Wave for this partnership with the Commission on Decolonization, giving us an opportunity to talk this talk. I wanted to go back to what Kaduku was saying on his call about, just the amount of conflict or tension that is happening across the world, between the United States and China, and how that affects us. And, we're a lot of people call us a first strike community, right? We're a community that if there was a conflict, we're likely the first kind of site of violence, theater of war, right? Which I think is, obviously concerning for a lot of us. And, this is something that hits close to home for a lot of people on Guam, because Guam, it wasn't that long ago that Guam was violently invaded by the Japanese Imperial Army during World War II. And so, obviously nobody wants a repeat of that experience. But, I got to say that, one of the things that Kaduku said that made a lot of sense is that, this is a different kind of warfare in 2026. In today's day and age, the way that wars are fought is totally different than what it was back in World War II. There's a nuclear weapon ended World War II. And now, these nations have enough nuclear power to like literally obliterate all of us. Yes. And so, it's a totally different ballgame. And I think that we've come to a place where, we recognize that that war is just a lose-lose for all of us. And I think even, the larger nations are coming to that conclusion. I was talking about in the last show that after this summit in Beijing with Xi and Trump, that was one of the outcomes, is these nations both kind of recognize that it's a bad thing for both countries to go to war. But there's still a lot of tension between the two nations, and it's something that each nation's policy has an impact on us. And so recently there was a statement that was put out by a bunch of Pacific nations. Sheesh, all of them except us, really, which sucks. It was the leaders of Australia, Cook Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, the Republic of Fiji, French Polynesia, the Republic of Kiribati, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, New Caledonia, Republic of Nauru, New Zealand, Niue, and the Republic of Palau, also the independent state of Papua New Guinea, Samoa, Solomon Islands, the Kingdom of Tonga, Tuvalu, the Republic of Vanuatu. All of these nations, island nations, released a statement calling for global peace. And one of the things that they said in it was that this is in response to this ongoing war that have continued in Ukraine and Iran. And the leaders of these island nations came together and put out this statement calling for peace. And they say that, quote, "As smaller countries at the end of global supply chains, we are acutely vulnerable to disruptions and shocks with profound impacts for our peoples," end quote. quote, we continue to call for understanding and support from our partners and larger economies, for our survival is not in our hands alone. We affirm that in the Pacific Way, we will always seek peaceful means to resolve differences, reduce tensions, and address the threats to international peace and security, consistent with our shared vision outlined in the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent. And I thought that this is very, very telling, right, of the realities of Pacific nations, right? Pacific nations we are affected by things that happen around the globe, whether we're involved in it or not. And clearly what these nations are kind of alluding to is the economic disruptions that have occurred as a result of these two ongoing wars, but also this ongoing competition between these two larger nations in the United States and China. And, the wars have been kind of mechanized in order to advance pressure, right? And there's this whole ongoing debate about the, closing the Strait of Hormuz, right? And how that has impacted global trade, and how, these conflicts have impacted the cost of crude oil and gas prices and the like, right? And so, when you think about the kind of face value impact, right, of trade disruptions or supply chain disruptions and how they affect Pacific nations that, have become dependent on imports. But I also think that it disempowers us, right? Because that's the value that Pacific Islands will always have in a modern economy, in a global economy, is that, the globe is still too big to, traverse without using ships and planes, right? And making stops. And because, there's these vast expanses of ocean that have to be navigated in order to facilitate international trade. Pacific Islands, a lot of us have, become empowered by being a waypoint, right? Being a place that facilitates the transit of vessels and goods. And so, it's to our benefit to have global peace and cooperation. When nations are at peace and they want to trade with each other, we benefit. And when they don't, and they're trying to, prohibit trade or slow trade or stop trade for, between different nations, then, we're affected also in a negative way. And so I think it's a cool thing, that these Pacific nations have come together in this call for peace. And I just can't help myself but look at it and, just notice our name missing in this list of sovereign Pacific nations. Well, I guess I shouldn't say completely sovereign. There's at least two of these nations that are not fully self-governing just yet, but they're part of, I think this came out of the Pacific Islands Forum, which Guam is an associate member in, but not yet a full member, because Guam is not fully self-governing. But yeah, I mean, even, what's cool about the Pacific Islands Forum is that, brings together these leaders from sovereign nations in the Pacific, and they create, this kind of Pacific alliance, right, in order to have genuine political power. And I just think if Guam wants to join our brothers and sisters in this sovereign alliance, then we got to be sovereign. And so I wanted to go back to what we were talking about earlier when former Speaker Cruz at our lecture series this past Saturday, said, that even the United States didn't draft a constitution before declaring their independence. And that, when you're not self-governing, it is not the right of the colonizer to grant self-government. It's the right of the people to assert self-government. And, that's something that I think that all of us need to consider as we're, deciding on a political status, is that out of the three legitimate political status options, right? Statehood, independence, or free association. Those are the only 3 recognized political status options that can deliver a full measure of self-government. Out of those 3, 2 of them require the consent of the United States, and there's only one of them that is just up to us. And that's independence, right? A nation does not ask for independence. They just assert it. They just say we're independent, and that's that. And then they can decide from there, what kind of relationships they want to have. Whereas the other 2 options, free association with the United States and integration or statehood, they require the consent of Congress, right? Congress has to approve of us either being in a compact of free association or has to approve of letting us into the U.S. system of government as equals, either by becoming a state and a member of the union or being integrated into an existing state. And so I think that that's just something that we got to think about, is what is the appetite for adding another member of the union and Guam becoming a state? Would Congress approve that? Even if we voted that, even if every single one of us voted for it, would Congress say yes? Would they let us be a state and give us voting representation in the Senate and in the House, the lower house, and votes in the Electoral College? Would they give us state sovereignty? I don't know. Yeah, but I think that's a question that all of us have to ask ourselves. Would they agree to sign a compact of free association with us? Would they make us one of the freely associated states like RMI, FSM, and Palau? We don't know. But I think that all of these things are possible. Independence, free association, statehood. I think any one of them is possible if we really, we approach it intelligently and we got a game plan. I think that that's all going to depend on our ability to negotiate. But I think that that's also a very exciting thing, negotiating with a superpower is very different than kind of just taking the crumbs that the superpower is willing to leave behind. And no matter how much money it is, you can't tell me that it's not the crumbs. You know what I mean? It's the crumbs. Even if it's a lot of money, it's the crumbs, man. That's what the United States is willing to kind of throw our way. Yeah. But if you think that that's all we're worth, then you're drinking the Kool-Aid, man. We're definitely more valuable than what we get. And we absolutely can stand to get more and have a better relationship. And so, I think this is the exciting thing to me about political status and the prospect of a full measure of self-government is that, we had a chance to negotiate. We get a chance to create leverage and power, I mean, Guam has clear value. I get really sick when I hear people debating about Guam's, ability to govern itself or how are we going to survive here with the economy, because the economy is so dependent on tourism and military spending, which I'm not arguing against. I'm not saying that we're not dependent on those 2 things. We absolutely are dependent on those 2 things. But I also think that we're selling ourselves short in our value and our return from both of those industries. I also think that those 2 industries have an effect on our ability to create new industries and new arms of our economy. And you can't tell me that military activity and tourism are compatible, because they're not. Holy cow, dude. Show me a tourist that says to you, I want to go to Guam because they have beautiful beaches and fighter jets. It's not, you know what I mean? I guarantee you, dude, that, there are a bunch of people who are in Tumon Bay enjoying the beautiful afternoon, and then, some bomber flies by and they take their video and they're like, yeah, yes, check this out, man. American might and freedom. I'm sure there are a lot of those people. I've seen those videos. Yeah. But there are also a lot of tourists. I guarantee you there are tourists who are like, enjoying this moment of zen. And then the bomber flies over and they're like, what is going on? Why are there 17 fighter jets tearing up the sky? Holy cow, did something just happen? And this is a regular thing for us. It's totally regular. It's so normal for us to see choppers flying like way, way low in like a group, or like fighter jets running multiple routes around the island. You know what I mean? This is a regular thing for us.
We don't even hear birds anymore.
No, you only hear the warbirds.
Yeah, that's all.
Only the warbirds. Yeah. I mean, shoot, dude. Even my baby has only been on Earth for like less than 2 years, and even that little dude knows. Like, he knows once he hears a fighter jet. Oh, he like points up. Oh, like, yep, that's the warbird, boy. That is a warbird. It's so sad that's just become a normal thing for us. Yeah. And what, but my point is that we're not getting our fair shake on this. I mean, first of all, it should be up to us, right? We should be able to determine the terms. This is our homeland. If you're going to have a military presence here, you're going to have bases, you're going to do your training, you're going to have your soldiers and your aircraft and all of that stuff. These are our terms. First of all, we should be able to decide whether we want that or not, period. I think that's a no-brainer. We should be able to decide whether we want that or not. And if we do want that, then we should be able to determine what the terms are. That's how it works. When the United States has a base presence in any nation, they negotiate the terms with the host nation. That's what they're doing in our neighbors' islands in Micronesia. They're going to have, they got base presence in all of the freely associated nations. There's bases in Palau, FSM, RMI. But each one of those governments negotiates the terms of their stay. How's it going to work? Where are they going to stay? What are they going to do? How's it going to affect us? All of those things, what do we get out of it? And there's certain things that they just, those nations don't want to negotiate. They're just like, no, we don't like that. You can't do that. We're not going to allow that. Yeah. Like that is so not where we're at right now. They just elevated that case on the OBOD, the open burn, open detonation. If you haven't heard about this, it's a pretty exciting thing. I mean, tragic, but exciting. So the military has, of course, as many of you know, has a whole bunch of unidentified, unexploded ordnance, explosive, basically bombs, right? Landmines and such, weapons, right? These are explosives that were not detonated during the war. And so it's their responsibility to identify all of these, collect them, and safely dispose of them, right? So they're not a threat to the community. And in some places, they're in the jungle in a populated village. You know what I mean? And so the military has, it's their responsibility to go in and pull those things out and get rid of them. But they also have to, they're trying to also get rid of their toxic waste and a bunch of other stuff that they, so they can't dump these things, so they want to burn them. And so that was their proposal, right? They're going to build a huge burn pit and they're going to burn these explosives. They're basically going to blow up the bomb in a hole, so that it's, away from people and nobody gets hurt. But they also want to throw in, whatever toxic chemicals they got that they want to get rid of. They want to burn that stuff too. And so they had this, this policy of open burn, open detonation, where they're allowed to do this. And so our community kind of put out this cry that we don't like this. We don't think you should just burn. How do we know what you're burning? And what about the families living downwind? Is that going to be bad for them? What are how's it going to affect us? We don't know. And so it sounds bad. And we don't think you should do that. And of course, this is a territory, so they don't really have to ask us. And so they were just going to proceed and do it anyway. And so, we ended up, there was a lawsuit filed, and now this lawsuit is elevating to the Supreme Court. And I think to me, the mess up thing about this whole situation was that the way that the military dealt with it. The military came to our leaders and our people and said, look, okay, we hear you on the open burn, but if we're not gonna, if you're gonna ban open burning, then we can't take care of this unexploded ordinance, and we're just gonna leave it. Like, that was the answer. I was just like, are you for real?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are the ones who like market yourself as being like, you know, you're like the organization that pulls off feats of the impossible daily. You know what I mean? We deliver democracy to oppressed nations across the world. We do the impossible, but we're not going to be able to take care of our unexploded ordinance if you guys don't let us put it in a hole and blow it up. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous. Yeah. It's ridiculous. And I get it. I get them saying, oh, well, you know, we can't, like, it's too big of a risk for us to put it on a boat and transport it somewhere because it could blow up in the middle of the ocean. And, like, you know, our people could get hurt. And I'm not saying, you know, I get it, man. But I don't want to be insensitive, but how's that our problem, bro? Like, that's not my problem, man. Yeah. Like, we didn't ask you to put these bombs here. Like, we were living here. You knew that. And you still put these, you know, and I get it. It was war, man. I mean, we're obviously we're ready to move past that part, but we're not going to move past the part where it's your responsibility to do the right thing and take care of it. And you can't, you know, doing the right thing and taking care of it is not just like, oh, we're only going to do it this one way, take it or leave it. And I just thought that it was super problematic that the military was able to just kind of put it on us and be like, oh, well, if you're going to ban this, then you just got to deal with these bombs. You got to figure it out on your own. Like, that's wrong, man. Yeah. It's wrong. And I don't get it. I don't get why. I mean, I do. I know why we have to go to the Supreme Court. It's because we're not self-governing, guys. It's because we got to decolonize. That's what happens. That's what time it is in the colony, man. That's what they do. That's how it works in a territory. You're not self-governing. You don't get to make decisions for yourself. It's take it or leave it, everything. Cookie cutter solutions, man. Like, obviously this is not working for us. And it's just, how long are we going to continue to just kind of accept this? And I think that that's the biggest sadness in all of it, is that there are a lot of us out there that are just kind of like, well, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What's wrong with our status? Why can't we have a task force for status quo? Get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of your mind, man. Status quo. It's terrible. You know, there's still people out there that are like, yeah, I know it sucks to be a territory, but, you know, I wouldn't vote for president anyway, so who cares? Like, that's the only difference. Like, there's people out there who legit think that that's the only difference between a territory and a state, is that we don't vote for president. They're just like, yeah, who cares? Who cares? I don't care about voting for president.
I say let's not stop using territory and just call it what it is, colony.
We should.
Yeah, stop saying territory.
That was one of my favorite quotes from Governor Joe Adat.
Call it what it is.
Yeah, so there was this, you can find this thing on YouTube, but he made this appearance before a congressional committee, and it was like televised and everything. And he opened like that. He said something like, "Buenas and half a day. My name is Joseph Ada. I am the governor of the
colony.
Yeah, the unincorporated territory of Guam, or the occupied colony of Guam."
Oh, okay.
And then he said, "Let us for today just be honest." That, you know, that territory is just a nice way of saying colony.
Right.
And he was just like, let's just, at least just for today, let's just call it what it is. It is a colony. And I was just like, holy cow, dude. You know what I mean? Like, we normally are not that bold.
Yeah.
We are not that bold, especially when we show up in the masses house. We're like on our best behavior. And then Joe Ada was just like, nah. And then instead, Governor Ada decided to keep it real. That's what happened. That's what happened. Governor Ada was just like, no, I'm just going to keep it 100.
Right.
I'm going to tell you like it is.
Yeah.
This is a colony, massa. Don't call it something else.
Right.
And I mean, you know, I think that's great. I think that it's our responsibility as leaders, as people, to insist that of our leaders, that our leaders are bold and that we're not going to sugarcoat it. And we're not taking the crumbs no more, man. And I'm not against incremental change. Don't get me wrong, guys. Like, I'm not saying, like, let's just boycott everything. Let's just strike everything. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think incremental change is important, so long as we're not losing sight of what really matters about fundamental change. Fundamental change has to happen. Like, I've debated this with so many different people. You guys out there, you've heard it. You've heard it. They've called me here. Chew me out. It's cool, man. I get it. But I'm still here saying the same thing I've been saying, and it's because it's logical. It is logical that we benefit from being self-governing. It is logical that sovereignty is a benefit to all of us, that the ability to make decisions for ourselves is good for us. And it's irrational to think that just because we want sovereignty means that we're going to get sovereignty and then get invaded. I think that that's just wrong. And that's just, that's not the world that we live in anymore. Man, it's not medieval times. This is not Game of Thrones, dude. We're not going to bend the knee. Otherwise, we get obliterated. No. Even if Guam was to choose independence, Guam could still have a viable relationship with the United States if they so chose. If that's what Guam wanted, then we could make that deal. And you can't tell me that, the U.S. would only be our friend if we're a territory. I call Bukaka. No. I think that that's a lie. I think that is absolute fallacy. I would even say that our bargaining position is abundantly stronger if we're independent, and there's a possibility that the United States would just lose Guam entirely. Like, just take Guam off the board. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. There's no way, dude. There is no way. I guarantee you that there will be a very enthusiastic negotiation between us, and that Guam could get a way, way, way better deal than what we got now, and still have some kind of defense arrangement if we wanted to. I mean, think about I was just reading about this potential arms deal between the United States and Taiwan. And, the report is that the United States is prepared to sell $14 billion worth of arms to Taiwan. Like, Taiwan wants to buy these weapons. The U.S., of course, got tons of guns. So they got the stock, and they're like, yeah, we're open for business. But the challenge is that Taiwan or China does heatedly opposes this. They absolutely disagree. And I think that this would be one of those things that would just deteriorate this kind of delicate balance between, or agreement, or quasi peace between Trump and Xi, right? Like, the U.S. and China are kind of delicate ground right now. This is delicate peace. But, I can't help but feel like this is the opportunity for Guam and for all of us in the Pacific, quite frankly. There's a lot happening in the world right now, and there's a lot of pressure. And so being self-governing at a time like this is critical. Anyway, we are up at the top of the hour, and that is about my time. So thanks for all of you tuning in and listening to us on the live stream. We will be back next week, Monday, for another round of political status discussion. My name is Melvin. Thanks, Yuli. Thanks, everybody out there. And we'll see you next time. Have a great day, everyone.